Hey guys, Jay Nelson here once again, and this video is going to be a little bit different in that it's going to be longer. It's going to be unedited, which doesn't really make much of a difference since all of my videos aren't really edited anyway, but it's going to be more of what we would call a laundry video. So I don't know if this was coined by anyone else, but one of the OG J vloggers, Victor, give me a flick man, give me a break man, he would always make these laundry videos, which were basically videos, kind of like basically like podcasts before podcasts, where you don't necessarily need to watch the video, you don't need to look at my face, as long as you're listening to the video. So if you got some headphones in and you're just doing some laundry or on a walk with your dogs or ignoring your family and just want something to listen to, then feel free to play the video or use YouTube Premium to download it and listen to it while you're doing something else. Just feel free to just listen and enjoy the ride, because I want to just go into a bit of not a deep dive or a look too deeply, but I kind of want to talk about a few things that have happened to me and my life in Japan, and it could be quite useful for some other people who live here or are thinking about coming here. So first of all, I want to make a video about my daughter's elementary school, but I don't think there's anything like massively interesting that I could make an individual video about. My daughter joined elementary school in April, as she turned 6 the year before, well, the school year before. And to be honest, before my daughter started elementary school, I had a lot of reservations. One, because, you know, you hear a lot of stories online. And two, because I'd never actually set foot in a running elementary school. And I've been to elementary schools, but only for the purposes of my school, my international school that I'm the principal of, for example, holding their sports festivals, their undokais. So I would go to visit the school, check out the sports hall, go to the principal's office, book the thing and stuff like that. So it was always in just terms of doing something else not related to the elementary school. So I'd only ever seen pictures of elementary schools, and then, you know, if you're on Reddit and stuff like that, you'll hear stories about maybe racism or bullying in elementary schools. So obviously, with my daughter being half Japanese, half not Japanese, it's weird to say half British, because British doesn't necessarily mean much. British comes in all shapes and sizes, different colors, different races and stuff like that. So she's half Japanese. I always use just half Japanese because I don't necessarily think too much about being British myself, so I never really put too much thought into that. But what I am happy to say is that until now, my daughter has been completely fine at elementary school. She's got a lot of friends. The kids are very nice to her. We put her in the Gakudo, which is the after school, which she doesn't really like. And to be honest, I don't really like too. It is just a holding room for kids while their parents are at work. They don't necessarily have anything to do except find ways to pass the time, which I do think is quite stressful for kids. However, I do love the actual school itself. And today we had like the school's observation day. So I don't know how, I think it depends on the school and the city, because the school that I work in, Ichikawa, has like 3 of these Saturday observation schools a year. Whereas for us in Funabashi, this has been our first, and it might be the only one. I think they are more conscious about working parents to not bother them too much. But yeah, so she had a couple of lessons that we could go and view. She had a lesson about kind of like social studies. I don't know if you can call it social studies, but basically it was talking about making friends. And if you see people who aren't playing with anyone, then how do you think they feel? how would they feel if people spoke to them and invited them to play, making sure to keep them playing with you in the future as well, keeping them happy, and to really take care of the people around you. They played, the teacher played not a movie per se, but a video about a boar, an inoshishi in Japanese, who was playing under a tree, and the leaves of the tree reacted to the inoshishi's mood. So because the inoshishi had no friends, the leaves went blue. But there was a fox, a tanuki, and a rabbit playing inside the tree. I don't know how they got in the tree in the first place, but they noticed that the leaves had gone blue, and then they could see this sad boar. And as they invited him to play and they all started throwing the leaves around, the tree turned to a rainbow of colors. And I found it quite interesting because there's such like a very wide mix of teaching styles now in Japanese classrooms, because I'd heard that it was still very old-fashioned. However, there is the blackboard, which I don't really mind because it's all about how you use these things, and it's whether like technology is great, but does technology stop some kids from, they're more focused on the tech rather than actually what you're being taught. So there was the blackboard, and then now all elementary schools have a big computer TV screen in the classroom, which is a touch screen and connected to an iPad on their desk so they can play videos, do worksheets, stuff like that. And then also connected to the TV is a camera which points down to the teacher's desk, which she used in the next lesson, where the next lesson was something that the parents could join in with. They were making something called chokkimpa, which sounds Korean actually, but it is something that we have in England, which I'm sure every country has, but I didn't even know how to name in English. It's where you fold paper into like a small triangle and then cut the shapes out, and then as you open it, it makes like a nice pattern. In England, we would always do it in the winter to make snowflakes, but I'd never actually associated a name with it. But yeah, it was a good way to use like scissor skills, like motor skills, making something nice, something that the parents could see. And of course, they're still in the first grade. But yeah, back to the inoshishi story. So yeah, of course, they had the blackboard, and then they played the video on the screen. And then when the teacher brought out the pictures she had made to represent the story, she said to everyone, like, to be honest with you all, I made all of these on ChatGPT because I'm terrible at art, and it was much faster to do it all. And yeah, and she referred to ChatGPT as Chappy, and the kids laughed, and the kids seemed to know what that was. So it's pretty interesting that first grade Japanese elementary school students are becoming a bit familiar with AI and what AI can do. In this case, she didn't want to draw the pictures herself or design the pictures herself. And it's quite difficult to get pictures online a lot of the times because they might have watermarks or something. So it's just easier to get ChatGPT to design something for you instead, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, my daughter reminds me of me when I was in school. She's like the teacher's pet. She always puts her hand up first. She wants to volunteer for everything. She wants to answer every single question, even if it gets to the point where it kind of annoys the teacher a bit. But yeah, so that really reminds me of me because I always wanted to answer everything. I always wanted to get the teacher's approval for everything until I was about 14 and 15, and then I really fell off. And then afterwards, the school held like a festival, and I was quite surprised because when they said they were having a festival, I was expecting just to be like a few handmade stalls, a few cheap things, but actually they had like proper restaurants. We've got a local pizza chain in Funabashi called Yoka Pizza, and they were there, and they had thousands of pizzas. So I have no idea how they were making them so quick. And you could buy a whole pizza for like 1,200 yen. karage, potato, the usual stuff. But they also had like bowls of pho, like the Vietnamese soup, Taiwanese chicken on rice, yakitori, which they were freshly making there as well. They had like they'd made a haunted house. They had the classic festival games where you throw the hoop. And my daughter and two of her friends, who I ended up having to chaperone everywhere, who kept asking me for money for stuff, which is fine because it's just about having fun, really. I'm not trying to be stingy or try and complain about anything, just as long as they all have fun. Because the games are only like 50 yen each anyway, so I'm not going to be stingy enough to hold back a few hundred yen to stop them having fun. So it's a pretty cool day, actually. It's one of my my longest experience with being in a Japanese elementary school, and all the experiences I've had with her school up until now have been very, very positive. Except for the after school, but that's technically not run by the school itself. I think it's like an outside thing, but just operates inside the school. But in that, there was a thing that's also got me thinking, because one of the PTA members this year is a guy from Australia, and he owns his own English school nearby, and he's very, very successful. He's a really nice guy, a really chill guy. I think he opened the English school originally in his apartment. I don't know if his wife helps him run it, but they've got 3 kids. Actually, it's interesting because we not greeted each other so much, but we would see each other around and kind of give each other a nod. I remember, I think like 3 or 4 years ago, I would sometimes see him in Starbucks and we'd kind of nod at each other. But our kids are both in the 1st grade this year. He's got kids. He's got a kid in another grade too, older, but he owns his own English school. And it's got me really thinking about what I want to do with my career. Because in a previous video, I mentioned, of course, that my international school, the school that I've been running for the last 6 years, is being closed at the end of this year. And I can't really go into the details of why it's closing, except for the fact that it's not really making as much money as they want, because my company owns this private school. The international school that I run is the private school, but they also have like 8 public schools, and the public schools are funded by the government. So you can get a certain amount of number of teachers that the government pays for, and it's actually a lot more teachers than you need. Like there's a school in my city run by the same company that has only 36 kids, but they have 22 members of staff, which is mental. Whereas my school only has 11 members of staff with more kids. But because we're a private school, we are limited just by the income that the parents pay for the school. My school costs about 130,000 yen a month, but when you think about rent, when you think about utilities, 11 members of staff salaries, health insurance, pension contributions, bonuses, it does take a large chunk of the money. Whereas in the public school, with the government paying for everything, you don't necessarily have to worry too much about the incomes and the outcomes as much, because you don't even have to really search too hard for kids, because now basically all families need nurseries for their kids. So even if you don't necessarily advertise, just because there's so much necessity for you to go to daycare, you'll end up going there anyway. You'll end up in the school. The school will have kids, whether you search for them or not. But because my school is closing, I need to think about what I'm going to do from April. And I have my online teaching on Italki, which pays about 350,000 yen a month. And I work about 25 hours a week. And that is very, very comfortable. And I'm very, very lucky, because 350,000 yen a month is a lot more than most people make. just with their normal teaching jobs. But I've been very lucky that also, you may notice that I've got very fat over the years for those who have been following me for a long time. But that is because I've been doing this italki job on top of my principal's job. And I work 7:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock. And then I'll do all my family stuff. And then from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock in the morning, I'll do italki. So I've been working like 13, 14-hour days for the past 6 years, basically. My principal's job pays very well. And I've been able to make more than 10 million yen a year for like the past 5 years or so. And because I am very conscious about money and saving, I have been able to put away a lot of money so that if I did ever stop working, I don't have to worry for multiple years. It's not 1 year or 2 years. I could probably give up working completely, and my wife could give up working completely, and we would be fine for at least 3 years, paying just what we normally pay for stuff. But look, my wife does have a good job as well, and I have my own italki, which means I'm not necessarily worried too much about a full-time job. But, of course, I am conscious about not going mental if I didn't have a lot to do. And I have been very fortunate that I have been offered a job already with another company, which pays a little bit less than my principal's job, but that's as the starting salary. Whereas this salary that I've got now has been the result of 6 years working. This new job pays the same as my principal's job, almost, as a starting salary. And they were talking about what they want to do together. And again, they reached out to me and they've offered me the job. I've got the official offer letter and stuff like that. So it is actually, all it is a matter of me saying yes or no. It does sound very exciting, but do I want to jump into another full-time job when me and my wife make enough money together with her job and my 25 hours a week on italki to pay for everything and save a little bit as well? So we don't need to reduce what we've saved. And actually, my apologies, that's going to be part of the laundry video, is my little cough. Sorry about that. But yeah, there's do I want to keep working full time and make more money, of course, and probably build a much bigger career, because this company that's offered me a job is more of a Japanese company, because my company now is a Japanese company, but it's a big university with lots of international schools. So there is a lot of like balance between culture and stuff, whereas this company is more Japanese. But it does have a much promising future, because the problem is with the principal's job is that I have now is that regardless of my school being closed, up until it had been closed, there was nothing for me to progress onto. I had been doing the same job for half a decade, and that was basically it. As long as that school remained open, that's basically all I was going to do, because basically it was the CEO, the head of the head office, and then the principals were underneath. So we were third in line in the company. So unless one of us was going to move into that position as the head of the head office, if he ever left, there was nothing ever to move on to. But this does offer promising. I can't really talk about what they've, because it's confidential, but it does sound really cool. However, life is quite short. I started this principal's job when I was 28. I am now 34. And do I want to use all of my youth for working hard? And it's kind of silly in a way to be like, but you've got your whole life to enjoy things. But as we've kind of seen from events that have happened over the past 5 or 6 years in particular, nothing is guaranteed. I probably will live until into my 50s and hopefully into my 60s. But I could get hit by a car tomorrow. And of course, if I get hit by a car, it wouldn't matter because I wouldn't know, I'd be dead. Well, if the car killed me, of course. But do I want to focus a little bit more on me? Like, for example, I've taken a lot of holidays recently because I've had like 30 something paid holidays remaining, which I've got to use before my school closes. And I've used that time to, for example, take my dogs to the dog park more, or think about making videos, or study Chinese. And I want to get back into studying kanji for the kanji kente again. And maybe one day take the N1 and do the BJT, the business Japanese test. So there's a lot of things that I want to do. And I just know that if I started another full-time job, I wouldn't be able to focus on things for me. So this is the kind of dilemma that we have. And also, me and my wife want to start thinking about having another child one day. And if I did jump into another full-time job, we wouldn't be able to have another baby soon because we'd have to think about me taking paternity leave, because that's something that I absolutely want to do, and that's a requirement on our child rearing. I don't know how to describe it very well, but you know, I worked in a nursery for 6 years or 7 years, being the person that took care of families' kids. But I wasn't ever able to take care of my own because I've been so busy. Actually, I do take very good care of I spend more time with my daughter than anyone in the family, of course, because this year especially, I rearranged my contract a little bit, but I was not able to take maternity leave the first time when Hannah was born. I took 2 weeks, and then I was very, very busy traveling a lot. And I don't want to do that again. I want to be there because it could be the last baby that we have. My dream was that I would have 5 kids. But unfortunately, it might end up with 2. Hopefully, we do get that second one. But this is kind of a real dilemma, and it's kind of so... It does feel weird at the same time, because I do see a lot of people talking on Reddit about they can't get out of the bottom level English teaching jobs. They keep bouncing around low level companies. We just had a guy who left my school because he wanted to jump ship early, but he's basically just bounced between all of these like lower position jobs. Like, he's just jumped from different preschool to different preschool and never really made his way up. And even in his mid 40s with like a decade and a half of experience, I mean, in my school, he was making about 260,000 a month. And it's not really something you want to be doing, especially if you've got a family. So I've been very, very fortunate that I could make close to 1 million yen a month consistently in the English teaching game. You know, I'm running an international preschool and teaching English online. You can make a lot of money with English. It's just about building something that you can make that money with. You're never going to get rich just being the teacher in the classroom, especially if you're working in ESL. As an actual teacher, it's much better, of course. But working in ESL, you're never going to get rich unless you start building stuff for yourself. Because then the other option is, do I want to make my own company? And I do actually own a company here in Japan, which is currently not operating yet. I can't really go into the reason why that was. That's connected to my job now as well. But I do have my own company, and I need to start thinking, okay, do I want to build something on my own, which I can kind of prepare and build at home and then teach on italki at night. So I've got a lot of options, which I'm very, very lucky to have. I've got a stable online teaching job with a lot of, repeating customers. I've got a job offer for a new company. My wife's got a great job. I'm very, very lucky and fortunate to be in the situation that I am. It's just about now figuring out what the next steps are. And I just kind of wanted to discuss these kind of things with you because it's quite hard to talk about these things with people because everyone's busy with their own stuff. And people usually tell me, you should just, do the thing that's the less hours and makes the most money, which is the teaching online on italki, which makes a lot of sense. But I also want to create things that helps other people. And I've got a few cool things in the pipeline, which I hope I can release within the next 6 months. But yeah, guys, it's been over 25 minutes. I did want to make this around half an hour, but I have got a lesson in 3 minutes and I couldn't get this microphone connected. I don't even know if it's connected properly now. But yeah, thanks all for watching, guys. If you've got any comments, if you've watched until the end of the video, please leave the comment lemon liquor and then see what people think. And then yeah, thanks all for watching, guys. Thanks all for listening if you decided to just listen instead. I hope that is what you did. I do want to try and make a podcast in the future, but as you can see, even with this, I still a lot, and it's kind of like a practice for me to keep talking on camera consistently for a long time to a camera by myself. So I think I did a pretty good job for my first time. But yeah, thanks all for watching and listening, guys. And I will see or speak to you all again soon.